Hi, I'm Lisa A. Smith, and I'm excited to be here with you today to talk about epigenetics. It's really a fascinating field and consider honestly one of the newer sciences, the newest advancements in our understanding of gene expression and DNA. So I'm so excited to talk to you about epigenetics and the power of epigenetics in our overall health. So here's the facts. Only 1% of chronic disease is truly caused by genes, right? And so, what we know conventionally, or what we've always believed conventionally, is kind of this idea of genetic determinism. And essentially, that means that our health, our physical, mental, and emotional health is determined by our genes. And essentially, we have no control over it, right? This is what we were born with, this is our DNA. And in this conventional model, really, we're more of victims, right? Because this is what we were born with, this is what runs in our family, this is what our DNA says is going to be our health outcomes. And in the conventional model or thinking of DNA and genetic expression, this genetic determinism says that it is what it is, right? There's really nothing we can do about it. Well, enter epigenetics. So epigenetics, epi meaning above the gene, above the DNA expression, right? Has to do with, how our body and our brains interprets our environment, which determines our gene expression. So is it true that we can be predetermined for something, that we can have a DNA or some genetic material that may make it more likely for us to get a chronic condition or a mental or emotional health episode more likely than someone else? Absolutely, right? But what we've since learned is that it's not just our DNA that determines whether or not that will be our outcome. It's essentially determined by our lifestyle, our environment, and our perception of our environment, our beliefs around our environment, right? And so I want you to kind of think of your genes and your DNA as a book. And some pages get tagged and some don't, but they're all always there, right? And the pages that get tagged are essentially determined by our environment and our lifestyle and what we're exposed to in the womb. So, in the womb, depending on what our parents were exposed to when we were in the womb, everything from diet, and environment and toxicity can determine whether or not we are going to have heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, many years later, much later in life, right? So whatever we're exposed to in the womb, that exposure begins to bookmark, right, those certain pages on our DNA and makes those genes more likely to express themselves later, right? So it's so important that health start, number one, in the womb. But then when we're outside of the womb and we're growing up and we have a little more control over our environment and what we're exposed to, what's super important to understand is that we all have genetic material, but not all of it gets read, right? And so now we're looking at belief systems and perceptions, right? So again, epigenetics is above the gene, right? Above the gene. And so essentially that has to do with how our brain perceives our environment. And the reason I keep repeating that is because you can have two people that come up in the same household that, for the most part are exposed to the same things, right? Socially, environmentally, more than likely exposed to similar toxic load and all of those things. But how they perceive those environments, how one may think something is a stressor and another may think something is an opportunity, really can determine or essentially result in them having different health outcomes. So when I say perception of our environment here, I'm really talking about our nervous system, right? And so, when if you're living in the everyday world on the grid, right? If you're just living in the regular world where you're working, trying to take care of yourself and your family and your community, you're striving for self actualization. You want to make sure you and the loved ones, the people you love, are safe and secure, right? But you're on the grid. You can see what's going going on in the news, right? You have regular ups and downs in your life just like anyone else, right? Well, every day, right, you're exposed to something that you can perceive as a stressor, as you can then turn into worry or overwhelm, right? That can, you are sometimes put in situations that can result in trauma. And so, reliving those things, the emotions that those experiences trigger, all determines whether or not certain genes are going to express themselves. So, I know a lot of times we're told by healthcare providers, we're told, by the quote unquote experts in our life that, this ran in your family. This was going to be your outcome. Unfortunately, these medications, are what you need because it's in your DNA, right? And there's essentially nothing you can do about it. But that's really, really untrue, right? And essentially, disease is a result of living out of harmony, right? Of our body and our minds and our spirit being in disharmony is what disease is. It's truly what causes disease. It's being in a place of disharmony. So a lot of people believe, I have this gene or this DNA for this certain type of cancer or cardiovascular disease. But really, what epigenetics has taught us and showed us is that it is literally your lifestyle and your environment that determines these things. And so you can modify your gene expression with your lifestyle, your exposure, and your belief. So now I want to talk a little bit about belief because, remember earlier I gave the example, two people coming up in the exact same household, for the most part, are exposed to the same things. And, one can live a life free of chronic conditions and chronic disease, and one can go down a road where they're battling all kinds of health disruptors, right? Well, I want to talk a little bit about nocebo versus placebo. One of the things that we've seen in really good medical double-blind longitudinal studies is that when someone is prescribed the drug, for example, it is in a lot of cases, it is the belief that that drug will work, which heals them, right? And we've seen this in a lot of studies where it was found that at the end of the study, the subject was only given a sugar pill. They were never given a medication, right? Yet they had positive health outcomes during that time. Why? Because they believed that what they were giving was healing them, right? But then also that works in the opposite as well. Giving that sugar pill, being given a sugar pill, and your health changing for the positive is called a placebo, right? But, being exposed to something or someone telling you that, hey, you should adopt a plant-based diet and it's going to help reverse your heart disease. It's going to reverse your high cholesterol. It's going to reverse obesity. And a plant-based diet will save you, right? And they try a plant-based diet and they say, it doesn't work for me. It's my DNA. That essentially is called a nocebo, right? So you have negative belief with nocebo, and positive belief with a placebo, right? I believe in this so much. I believe that this procedure or this pill is going to work. I believe that you giving me like this is the cure all, and I believe it. That's a placebo, and it actually happens. It works in real time, right? But just the opposite is also true, right? If you have been told that there's nothing you can do about this condition because it was predetermined that this was going to be your health, and that's been drilled into your head, and as a result of it, you've been on this blood pressure medication for 5-10 years, and you no matter what. So here comes enter this lowly plant-based nutritionist saying, no, that's not the case. You can eat plants, you can change this, you can work out, you can drink water, all of this stuff. But you have that belief embedded so much that essentially you manifest the result that you already believed before even giving this lifestyle a try. And that's considered a nocebo. So what we've seen is that, changing your health outcomes and essentially modifying your gene expression has to do with how you interpret your environment, right? And again, disease is a result of living out of harmony, right? And it's important to note that harmony is not just about what you eat. It's not even just about how you move. So your health and your entire body, mind, body, and spirit being in harmony It's not just all about what's on your plate or your workout regimen. It's also determined by, the relationships that you're in. It's also determined by whether or not you've reached a point of self-actualization in your life. Like, have you reached to a place where you're being obedient and you're serving, contributing to society? That has a huge part of our fulfillment. What about unresolved trauma, right? Have you done the work to get rid of unresolved trauma? Because that recurrence, when you get triggered with trauma that you've experienced in your life, when you get triggered in your environment, that has an impact on our body and our minds and our brains. Emotions are simply a physical manifestation of our thoughts that we're thinking, right? And so every thought that we think and every feeling that we feel manifests on a cellular level in our body. And so what we know from epigenetics is, again, right, you can be predisposed, but it is literally your lifestyle, what you're exposed to in the womb, and then how you perceive your environment that determines whether or not those genes are going to be bookmarked and are going to express themselves. No matter if everyone in your family had, this chronic disease, that does not mean it is going to be your fate. There is no guarantee that it's going to be your fate. And you have the power now to stop it. You can stop the train on this track for your own family, right? Right now, if you are making the transition to a healthier lifestyle, if you are starting to, grasp a hold of your health and really buckle down on drinking your water and eating your plants and eliminating salt, oil, and sugar and exercising regularly, and, exposing yourself to self-care practices, meditative practices, visualization, really becoming obedient in your calling in life and chasing that and ensuring that you're contributing to society at a high level. You can stop the train of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer in your own family. Literally, they say that the most powerful person in the household is the person in the kitchen, right? First and foremost. So you can change the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals that your family are exposed to, and that will literally change what, again, DNA, what gene markers are tagged on their DNA strand, and they can change the outcome for their kids and their kids, right? And this is all epigenetics. This is literally a shift in the environment, right? So what does it take for you to shift your environment to essentially change the outcomes of your offspring and your offspring? That's what epigenetics is really all about. It's really taking you out of the victim seat and empowering you to understand that regardless of what you saw, right? Disease everywhere, obesity everywhere, or depression and anxiety, regardless of what you saw, or regardless of what you've never seen, right? Maybe you haven't seen your immediate family be healthy, everyone's struggling with something, or everyone's on medication. So regardless of what you've seen, or regardless of what you've never seen, understand that optimal health is available to you. Understand that you have more control than you've ever thought before. We know that 40% of citizens deal with at least 2.7 comorbidities, and at least 60% of the population deals with at least one chronic disease. But this does not have to be you. You have more control than you think. So empowering yourself to perceive your environment different. When something happens, do you look at it as a stressor and worry and attach worry and overwhelm, or do you attach guilt and shame to your own behaviors? Or do you look at it as an opportunity to grow, to develop your self-awareness, to develop your emotional intelligence? Do you take everything that comes your way as an opportunity to be better, or do you fall victim to it, right? Do you take advantages of opportunities such as these to learn as much as you can and then apply it, right? Don't make it shelf help, but make it self-help, right? So don't just learn it and put it on the shelf, really apply it to your life, right? And so this is what epigenetics is really about. It's about creating a high level of self-awareness around your current status, right? And then positioning yourself to learn more so that you can do more, right? So attaching yourself to the proper entities and people who have the knowledge and who can walk you through the strategies necessary, right, to get on the other side of whatever you're battling. And then, right, once you've done that for yourself and got the proof that it's available to you, then you can go out and share it with the world. And that's when we start reaching, those points of self-actualization, right? So really just the giving of your gifts, right? So if you've been given the gift of health, if you've been given a second chance, right, you got to pass it down. And that's really important. And that heals us. Serving heals us, right? And so understand, listen, only 1% of the disease is truly caused by DNA and genetics, which means 99% of this thing is really all about, our environment, our exposure, our lifestyle, and our pursuit of harmony and homeostasis on a daily basis. So get out there, go after it, right, and make sure that you attach it to a lifelong mission and goal, right? It's not something that you ever truly achieve. There's levels, and once you reach one level and master one level, another level will open up for you, right? But you can never stop the pursuit of optimal health.